That's how I ended up restoring his Oliver 88, was because that was his tractor that he used.
This is just a great way to have a little toy. This is my golf and everything else.
That's how I met my wife, was through Grand Valley Tractors.
It can be a rough old tractor in its work clothes, grease dripping all over it, but you can use it, have fun, enjoy it. That's what it's about.
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation. Generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa Public Television.
Hello, I'm Mike Pearson. Welcome to Timeless Tractors, The Collectors. In this sea of tractors, I found my favorite color. The Minneapolis Moline G900 I use on my farm is a workhorse with that trademark reliable engine. Now, these mechanical beasts hold a special place, both in the history of agriculture and in the hearts of those who've lovingly restored them. Now, my Mini wears its work clothes. But these tractors have been transformed by Patrick Miller and his siblings into works of art. It's their way of telling the story how these machines revolutionized American agriculture. But it raises the question, why do men and women spend countless hours breathing life back into these engineering marvels? Right along with us as we explore the stories of hard work behind the people harvesting history. Timeless Tractors, The Collectors. Some would say that celebrating your past and remembering where you have come from is the cornerstone of growing up. Cherished mementos of times gone by serve as chapters in the story of how a person got to where they are today. For Kristen Gall, that treasure happens to be his grandfather's International 1206, and it was missing for almost a quarter century.
When I started searching for this tractor, it was kind of a family thing. My grandpa had passed away several years before, and I had a fascination with 1206s. Kind of muscle tractor look to them, just a little bit different than the other things, and they smoked like a freight train. And to a young boy, that's pretty interesting stuff.
Some of Gall's fondest memories on the farm were centered on that tractor, so he set out to find it. Hunting for Leonard Gall's tractor turned out to be more of a daunting task than Gall first anticipated.
I knew the exact tractor if I ever found it, and I started searching, pestering everybody, do you remember what happened to this tractor? And one guy says, well, yeah, he said, I kind of remember it was, there was a guy come looked at it on the farm and he bought it, and it didn't even go to the lot when Grandpa traded it off. He bought it right at the farm.
Long talks with family and neighbors, looking for clues as to who bought the tractor after it was traded in 1979, chasing lead after lead, a dealer who sold it to a farmer who sold it off in the farm crisis to a farmer in La Plata, Missouri, who put the old International to work. When the tractor developed a knock in the engine and the tractor was left for dead, traveling to its final resting place in a salvage yard 250 miles away.
So I called that yard and explained to him what I was doing, and at first, you kind of get the typical junkyard guy voice on the phone, that kind of gruff, doesn't really have time to mess with you, kind of thing. But he said, well, he said, if I've got it, he said, odds are it's parted out and there's not anything left of it. And so I kind of dropped it at the time as, well, that's probably where it went, but nothing left of it.
Gall still wanted proof serial number 14207 was gone for good.
Well, a couple years passed, or I'd say 1 to 2 years passed, and I still had that urge to find it, or at least put it to rest. If there was nothing left but a clutch housing, then be it. You know, but I was happy to know where it was at and I could put it to rest. So I called back up there, and this time a young teenage boy that would just happen to be working for Ray answered the phone, and I explained to him what I was looking for, and he kind of got a little excited. He said, you know, he said, there's a tractor out there that kind of fits that description. He said, I can run out there and take a look at that serial number and call you back and see if that's the one. Well, about a half an hour passed, and he called back, and he said, well, it's here. He said, that's the one. And boy, I was wound up at that point.
So Gall borrowed a trailer, called his brother, and headed to Iowa. What they found wasn't much. The most popular items had been sold off, but the frame, engine, transmission, and cab remained. They loaded up what was left and headed for home. The disappointment about the tractor's current condition didn't last long. He had finally found the missing tractor, and it was home. Then it was time to get to work. Buying a donor 1206 tractor for parts, Gall was all in for bringing his grandfather's 1206 back to life.
Well, it didn't take as long as a person would think, because whenever I come home with this tractor, I went at it like killing snakes. I was wound up, and I wanted to get that thing running, and I wanted to use it in the field the next spring. I didn't paint it for a show tractor. I painted it to use on the farm and just have a nice tractor.
And Gall has received an unexpected return on his investment of time, blood, sweat, tears, and cash. Gall began to think about all the other collectors who were making the journey he had just finished. Could he help them? So he started an online registry just for international 1206 tractors.
I've reunited several guys with the ones that they've lost, and you can't imagine a 70-some-year-old man being just as excited as a schoolboy as when you say, well, yeah, I know where that tractor's at. He gets excited, and it just makes you feel like $1 million. Tractor collecting doesn't have to be about a pretty tractor that you take to show. Tractor collecting is something that you enjoy. It can be a rough old tractor in its work clothes, grease dripping all over it, but you can use it, have fun, enjoy it. That's what it's about. You just got to enjoy it.
At the heart of tractor collecting is remembering and cherishing how these great machines sunk heavy iron into the rich soil at the beginning of the season, or helped bring in a field of corn that was ready for the bin. For one southeast Iowa farmer, the hard work these iron beasts can do is the collection.
I did this in respect to my heritage, my dad, my grandfather. I happen to be a farmer. I'm the 7th generation into farm. I have 2 sons that are farming with me today, and we're keeping that heritage. They came from Germany, wanted to come to the New World and start farming. They kept moving west, and this is where they ended up at. And so I guess it's a heritage that I'm just trying to preserve. These machinery were important in their day, and they had a purpose. And some of the stuff they were designing was unbelievable. And so that's why we do this show.
For the better part of a decade, Dave Kobler of Ottumwa, Iowa has cherished the land that 7 generations of his family have farmed. Pride in farming spills over onto the machines he and his family use to write their story. So each year, toward the end of the harvest season, Kobler saves back 20 acres of crops for Antique Harvest Days. Free of charge and open to the public, the event is a chance for people to read for themselves the chapters Antique Farm Machinery wrote on the Kobler farm. The harvesting is spread out over a weekend, filled with shocking, threshing, shelling, and harvesting, with equipment ranging in age from the turn of the century to the 1960s and 70s. And while most tractor shows are focused on perfectly pristine farm equipment, this show shines on the dirt being turned as machinery from a distant era is worked to harvest history lessons for a new generation.
Well, this is our livelihood, you know, this is what we've always grown up with, and this is what is farming and produces food, you know, this is how it all began. You know, these were the true inventors that started with nothing and they had to come up with something. They had to come up with a tractor or the Waterloo boy, or, you know, they were trying to better themselves in lives, and we just drive by this stuff every day and see it, you know, and nobody respects how it really started, you know. Stuff's gotten better over the years and bigger, but they're the true inventors, and the ideas are unbelievable what they came up with.
Clamp the bolts down, which pulled the splines, because it has to be slid on to engage the spline.
Guests to the farm have the opportunity to learn how the equipment works, whether it's the hand crank shellers or keeping the Waterloo boy running for the baler. Everyone gets a chance to take a turn, learning firsthand how these machines changed agriculture forever. The love of these old machines, like the love of farming, runs through the veins of 7 generations of the Kobler family. DJ and Tyler represent the 8th generation working the land, and the tractor bug flows through them as well.
I like the old ones. I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite. I've seen so many odd ones, and that's one thing cool about this show is we don't have, you know, a lot of people and a lot of tractors, but I think we have a lot of different stuff that come to this show, you know.
Oh, I think it's wonderful because the younger generations gets to see what's going on, how it used to be. It's not everything's big combines or anything. It's just what it used to be. And I was telling Dad that I like how everyone brings something different, and there's different ideas for this different stuff. A lot of people don't even know what a Model A tractor is. People need to know this stuff because this is what it used to be, and people need to know history, in my opinion, because it's very important.
Hosts and guests alike recognize the importance about this one-of-a-kind, hands-on history lesson.
Well, it demonstrates how things used to be done. All the hard labor that they used to put into it. And it's kind of a dying thing. These machines are hard to come by.
Richard Taylor of Moulton, Iowa volunteers every year for a chance to harvest some important memories. His multicolored tractor experience growing up helped him appreciate the diversity of all makes and models. While he can respect the modern conveniences of today's technology, he can't help but recall, first and foremost, remember where you came from.
Yesterday, for instance, I was able to pick corn out here in the field on a tractor-mounted picker, and I used to enjoy that immensely. But it was 1984 was the last time we did anything like that, so I counted it up. It was 31 years since I'd been on the machine. And there happens to be a friend of mine here today. He has the exact model of tractor and the exact model of picker and everything, and he let me ride it for a few rounds. And it was a very nice experience to reminisce and say, hey, I've been here before.
Honoring where you have come from is the essence of Antique Harvest Days. For Dave Kobler, watching the excitement on the faces of both young and old alike lets him know that his guests are harvesting memories for the next generation that will keep the lessons of rewarding hard work alive.
The purpose of this is to keep things from getting junked and tore out. Everything had a purpose. I don't care what nationality, John Deere, international case, whatever. That's how this country got the way it is because of those type of inventing type people that made our society the way it is today. I guess what my purpose is to preserve that.
James Fred has a knack for mastering things. At only 28 years old, he runs a 70-head dairy with his family in rural Indiana. And at a much younger age, he began conquering the art of tractor restoration and collecting under the watchful eye of his grandfather.
I kind of mostly interested in like tractors from the 30s, 40s, and early 50s. They're titled under, lesser known classics, low production, rare model tractors. Grandpa started collecting and restoring antique tractors back in around about 83, and obviously I wasn't born at that time, but I grew up around him working on them, and I enjoyed helping him. That was the first one that Grandpa gave me. It's 1936 model R44. And the second one he gave me was this tractor here, which is a 1939. It's one of the last ones built. He gave me that one, and that was kind of what got me started into Graham Bradley's. From the time I got it to the time I got it finished, it was 3 years. And that was how I met my wife, was in the process of restoring that tractor that we got our wedding pictures taken on it after the wedding. When they switched to the 1938 model year, then they called them the 503.103. And that was just strictly the row crop version. The wide front ends, which were a low profile tractor with wide front and 24-inch rear wheels instead of the 36-inch row crop wheels. And that's a model 503.104. They're neat looking, and they're not something that everyone sees mostly. I mean, that's kind of why I'm interested in the lesser known tractors. Usually if I'm going to buy one, I'll buy one that's not everyone's heard of. I enjoy the extra challenge. You can't get parts, so you got to work out a little harder. It's a 1931 Bradley GP. They built them in the late 1930 and through 31, and they only built about
to be a part of. Obviously, it's not something I really ever heard much about, so I wanted to be able to work on it with them and learn about it, and something that we could work on together and restore together, so it's been a good thing. amazing how much he knows, but he grew up with it, and his grandparents and just their whole family. It just blows my mind how much they know and how it's just great to be a part of.
First inspection at delivery, second inspection after 50 hours, third inspection after an additional 100 hours.
As Dean McCloskey journeyed down the road of life, the machines he has collected and restored became much more than just a mechanical exercise in restoration. As the rust and grime come off, layers of history, challenges, success, and failure were revealed. McCloskey soon realized that time spent working with old iron alongside his father, Alan, was more than a mechanics lesson, it was a master's class in history. These tractors were revealing more than their power or their unique engineering. They were revealing the notes of how they plowed through days long since gone, planting history that McCloskey knew was destined to be passed down to his son.
When Dad started collecting tractors, I guess whether he knew it or not, it kind of began back in the late 50s.
This is the first one I ever restored.
He got a few tractors and started restoring them, and then when I was growing up and his age, I found myself doing the same thing, but I just thought everybody restored tractors. I didn't know any different. You know, I just thought that was a normal thing to do.
For McCloskey, the more rare the tractor, the better. From Russia to South Africa and every place in between, each country seems to have machines that tell stories McCloskey wants to hear.
I've always enjoyed the challenge of finding the parts and the research about how they go together. The ones that are a little bit more difficult to restore, the ones that take a little bit more time and searching to restore. By collecting the odd and the unusual gives me a chance to look and say, okay, well, these guys thought this was a better way of building their product, but yet these guys wanted to build it this way. Who ended up being right? You know, maybe in some cases they were both right.
Instead of seeing the traditional logos like John Deere, Farmall, or Case, the McCloskey collection features names like Porsche, Fiat, and Volvo.
We strive to get the odd and the unusual, and a lot of foreign tractors and low production tractors, and kind of always had my eyes open for a Lamborghini. It was one of them that was very elusive, not an easy one to come by. Ferruccio Lamborghini started out building tractors before he built cars. He was really proud of his name, and he had Lamborghini cast in just about all the castings. You know, it's on the brass plate.
McCloskey's white whale of tractors would take considerable time to find, and once it was found, the tractor was telling a very sad story.
We drive clear out to eastern Pennsylvania, and the first thing I want to verify is the engine stuck? Unfortunately, it was. And not knowing what I was going to get into, didn't know if parts were available, didn't know if I could make parts, didn't know how bad it was stuck. Well, the next thing was I pulled the oil dipstick out, and there's nothing at all on the dipstick. After we get it back home, and I ended up tearing the engine completely apart, the rod bearings had seized to the crankshaft. The hood was really, really, really beat up pretty bad. It took a lot of pounding with a sledgehammer, you know, starting out with big hammers and eventually working down to smaller hammers, tightening the metal with the torch. I did a lot of that. This was pretty much flat, so it had really bashed in the front end pretty bad. It took a lot to get it back in shape.
The history and the lessons learned from the unique engineering and mechanics of tractors with worldly backgrounds, the turning back of time with every rotation of a wrench, have inspired a vigilance in Dean and Alan. The elder McCloskeys hope others in the collecting hobby will keep these tales of suffering and success safe for the next generation. And following in their footsteps is the youngest McCloskey, Cole. He is being handed the rich history these machines produced so it can never get lost.
Probably one of my favorite parts is most kids my age don't get to have tractors like a lot of kids do, but we get to have as many as we ever want because our grandpa started our collection years ago, and we've just carried that on for years.
Yeah, we both hope that he's able to just keep working on them and keeps the interest. And I wish more people were interested in it because generations have came and gone and not passed the hobby or the collections on to kids, and whether or not maybe they're not interested, and maybe that'll change for some of the younger guys, hopefully sooner than later.
Most restoration projects start with a solid core, an engine block, a frame, something that gives the project a place to begin. But what do you do when the base that grounds the project no longer exists? Members from a two-cylinder tractor club in Ames, Iowa had just such a project, and they took it to another level. They set out to recreate two tractors that were built with a military purpose, were absolute failures, and no longer exist. Brian Anderson, a retired insurance salesman, is part owner of two restoration projects that brought John Deere's ill-conceived armored A1 and A2 tractor tanks back to life. These predecessors to the Jeep were the brainchild of Charles Wyman, who was the great-grandson of John Deere. On the eve of World War II, Wyman, only recently promoted to president of Deere & Company, conceived the idea for a light armored vehicle for the military. Two prototypes were built in Waterloo, Iowa, and sent to the Aberdeen testing grounds for the Army's approval. Wyman's armor-clad John Deere A's were a dismal failure.
And then we had a report on the progress of these tanks in 1940. And what this was like an 80-page report that said, here's what's bad about it, here's what's good about it. About 4 sentences was good, 80 pages was not so good. So
Another partner in the reconstruction project was Dr. Leo Milliman, a retired doctor also from Ames, Iowa. An avid collector with more than 30 antique tractors to his name, Milliman was intrigued when he read a magazine article about these mysterious tractor tanks. When asked, the pair have conflicting stories of what happened next.
went ahead and read the article and gave Leo a call, and he said, yep, I read the article. And Leo told me, he said, Brian, I said, I want to build this. I want you to build the second one.
So Brian came to me one day having read that article and said, Leo, we're going to build this. I said, you're crazy. He said, nope, I'm going to build Army. There were 2 of them, Army A1 and Army A2. Leo, you're going to build 2. I'm going to build Army A1.
And he says, you bet, be happy to do it, but you got to get the machine guns.
And I said, Brian, do you have any idea how much that'll cost? He said, nope, doesn't matter. I said, well, it kind of matters. I said, well, what are we going to use for guns? Because each of these is equipped with 2 .30 caliber machine guns.
And I bought 4 of them, 2 for him and 2 for me. And completely legal. And I came back, threw them back in my car. I drove right to Leo's house. In the middle of the night, woke him up and said, come out here. I got the machine guns. And he said, we're building the tanks.
And Brian says to me, Leo, if I get real machine guns, will you do it? I knew he couldn't get real machine guns, so I said, yeah, I'll do it. And that was on a Tuesday. I remember our conversation, and Saturday night he came into my house in a white Tahoe, kind of loaded down in the back, and he pulled off a blanket, and there were 4 .30 caliber machine guns in there. He said, now you're gonna do it? And I said, I'm a man of my word, so we will.
The challenge ahead for the duo planning this reconstruction went beyond steel, rubber, and old tractor parts. The original prototypes had been shipped back to Waterloo, Iowa, dismantled and melted down. And the only evidence of their existence were 8 photographs and the 80 pages of notes from military testing. Anderson and Milliman started with the basics. A trip to Kansas produced 2 John Deere A's, and with help from 2 trusted restoration mechanics living a few towns away, work began resurrecting the armored iron. The task was more difficult than they'd anticipated.
The key thing is pictures and computers. I could take a there's a 60-foot blind spot when you're inside this. You can't see. There's 60 feet out there that's blind.
Now, some of the things that were interesting about it that didn't turn out too well were the fact that the machine guns over here could shoot out the back tires, which is probably not a good idea.
There's steel pan seats in those days, no cushion air ride seat. They were steel pan. Hit a bump, that seat would go down and spring you up, hit his head, and actually in the testing, one of the drivers was knocked goofy, and the Army people keeping track of things saw this tractor wobbling down the road because the driver had been temporarily knocked out.
Inside the turret itself, it's very claustrophobic, and shooting a machine gun in a steel box would be very, very hard on the ears, and it'd be hard to get enough ear protection. In one of the reports that we read from Aberdeen, that when the machine gunners shot the machine guns, the shells would fall down and burn their legs.
So one of them came up with an idea, we'll cut a hole in the bottom so the casings would go out, but then you drive on rough, dusty dirt, all the dirt would come up in and about killed off the guy.
Despite their flaws, the Army A1 and A2 created a lifetime of great memories for a couple of guys looking for the ultimate tractor challenge.
It's just a great deal of satisfaction to take something from scratch, from 8 photographs, work for 2 years to rebuild it piece by piece. So a lot of math, thinking, working together. We became good friends, and then we got a good product at the end. It's never been done before, and it's never been done since. I don't know if anybody would ever want to do it again.
Why did I build it? Well, Leo and I don't golf. And as I said, we were both farm kids, and we love tractors. I mean, that's, both grew up on a farm, and that's why we wanted to do it. And I wanted to have a hobby that wasn't golf or anything like that. And living in the country, this was just a great way to have a little toy. This is my golf and everything else. So that's why I like it.
On the outskirts of Dixon, Iowa, The Miller family farm is home to an exceptional treasure of tractors. It began as most tractor hobbies start. In a way to honor his father, Kevin Miller began restoring the family machines. Little did he know the love of restoring would spread like wildfire through his children, producing a collection of unmatched, one-of-a-kind tractors fueled by friendly sibling rivalry. Kevin Miller's love of tractors started before he could say the word. Watching his father work on these mechanized beasts in his workshop, his eye was on the prized Oliver 88, the iron pen that started writing the Miller's agricultural story.
As a small child, I loved tractors, and I pestered my parents for years. When can I drive that Oliver 88 by myself? And I finally got an answer that I could start driving the tractor when I turned 10. And I just could not wait. It was amazing, you know. I'm big enough to drive it, and I love driving it.
When Miller entered 4-H, he was firmly set on restoring his first tractor. One tractor turned into 3 in a short period of time, but after those were done, his passion for restoring and collecting faded. One tractor was put to work on the farm, the other 2 were parked in a shed and forgotten. Eventually, he sold all 3. While Miller's passion for restoration faded, it did not fade away completely. With the birth of his son, the drive to fix old tractors fired right back up.
When I had my first son born, and then he grew up to be in 4-H age, I started him on it. I said, because I loved it. And so he started it and did one tractor, and he liked it, so then that progressed to the next one. And my daughter thought she was missing out on something, and so she got a tractor, and pretty soon it was a family affair.
Fast forward a few years, and Miller is very proud of his tractor restoring trifecta. His love of the hobby is reflected in his daughter Megan and sons Jacob and Patrick.
I always feel like I was born in the wrong decade, that I should have been born back when these were actually being used. I like being around these. I like preserving the history of them, just because if you don't preserve the history, then what do you have? You know, you gotta learn from the past and use the past, and that's just a big thing for me.
We just have a pure love for tractors that started with my grandfather, went to my father, and then he brought it back to us. It's just something different people around here don't even do. Some people don't even know about tractors, and we love experiencing the restoration of it and the hands-on skill that we learned from it and what we can use on for the future.
We put a lot of time, a lot of effort. It was a lot of summers, a lot of 100-degree summers that in July, we're sitting in the paint booth. It's a lot of sweat and blood and tears, but it was a lot of also of us all helping each other. I might be better at something than my brother, and we just come together and we all work together, no matter if there's 1 tractor in the shop or 4 tractors in the shop. We love to do it together, and it brings us closer together. Now just a 1/2 inch towards Dad. Down.
Through grueling hours in the shop, all 3 have found their favorite make and model of tractor. Patrick is a mini man, favoring the energy yellow painted machines that are known for their reliability.
This is Prairie Gold number 2, technically. There's 5 colors that Minneapolis Mulling would have used. This would be the second one, Prairie Gold number 2. Prairie Gold number 1 was only used a couple years in the late 30s, if I remember right. Prairie Gold number 3 is a lot oranger than that.
For Megan, her diverse restoration resume is long, but when asked about her favorite tractor color, she is a daddy's girl.
My dad and I both favor red. I started out with a 1066 for my first tractor as an international, and then I moved to a 1566, and then for my last project as a 21-year-old FFA'er, I wanted to do the 1456. That was like my dream tractor all over the years, but we couldn't find one, or it was too far away or whatever, but my dad made sure to get me the tractor that I wanted for my last year. It was pretty cool to get that tractor. And I got reserve grand champion at the Iowa State Fair with that one, and that was the highest award that I had gotten by myself on a tractor ever.
Kevin noticed his daughter's desire to be working with the boys at an early age.
At the beginning of her restoration career, I'll put it that way, she restored my dad's Oliver and a John Deere, and she did a case with her brother, but she was always the international girl. You know, as she got on after a couple years, she just loved the internationals. Her favorite color's red, like mine, and so she wanted a red tractor, and I think she liked the gold contrast with the red, so she was in it. We always call her the international girl, and I think it was just that gold contrast she liked so well, and that's why she wanted one.
They'd paint the whole hood gold, and then when they wanted to actually sell them, they'd send them back to the factory and repaint the outside red, but leave the underside gold. So that's how you know you got a gold demonstrator. So these 3 tractors are all golds.
Megan is proud of her hobby and has used it as a way to say thank you to her history and heritage.
He'll bring up the memories of him actually using it how many years ago and us wanting to restore it. And that's how I ended up restoring his Oliver 88, was because that was his tractor that he used. And so I did that in, I think, 5th grade to kind of commemorate him using it and have him be like, yep, that's my tractor, and it was restored for a memory. Like the older John Deeres that we have, we use them. We wanted to keep them and make them look nice and not just let them deteriorate.
For Jacob, green is the color of his hobby, but it has nothing to do with antlers. And like his older siblings, perfection is the key. Not just the tractor, but every part of its story as well.
This one is a 1550 high crop diesel. There was not many made of them because it's such a small tractor, and 1550 and 1555 diesels as it is are really hard to find. And well, what's really unique about this one is the high crop factor, is that it's a row crop, but it has a lift kit on it. So it has, I call them drops on the back. So a chain goes around to the bottom, which hooks up to a different axle, which boosts the tractor up in the air. It also has a row crop front end, but it also has a back support on it so that it can support the longer knees so it can sit higher in the air. So it's kind of a mixture between a high crop and the row crop front end together.
Despite their differences in color preference, the tractor trifecta all agree that hunting down and finding the rare and unique machines is the best part of collecting. And the more rare, the better.
It's a 1955 Heritage. Obviously, it's a little different from the rest of the Olivers you see around here because it's red, white, and blue. But this one is actually only one of one ever made. We got it home and it had 5 gallons of water in the engine. It looked like it got beat to death. I built it all the way back up, brought it to the state fair, competed with it, and luckily won first in my class. So it means a lot to me.
And what means a lot to Jacob means even more to an extremely proud father.
Very proud of them. All these tractors in here, there's only a couple that they didn't do. The rest of them, yeah, Patrick, Megan, and Jacob all did, and they put a lot of sweat in them. And you know, I'm not saying there wasn't some bickering, but then they'll pull together and, you know, help support each other. And for them to do all that, it is quite gratifying for my wife and I, and just a family deal.
It's clear that what drives many of these collectors to grind off the rust, brush off the dust, and weld together a larger-than-life piece of history varies from place to place. If you have seen, it's not about the money or the time invested to bring these iron horses back to life. It's about remembering how these machines touched more than soil and cultivated more than a crop. Thanks for watching. I'm Mike Pearson.